You can reuse it. It doesn't get all crinkled and stuck to itself. I already have one open, so I'm just going to use that. So first you want to start with this. And get a couple of sheets of it that are roughly the size of the page, a little bit bigger. Okay, and again, I'm gonna start by doing a niche, not my pages. So I'm gonna start in the back of this book, and I'm probably gonna bring more back here. Well, this is inconvenient. We're just gonna go right here. Okay. A really important thing to think about when you're making your niche is to lift up the book, right? So that you have a pretty solid edge to that niche. Otherwise, you're going to get this kind of bowing, and it's not going to want to adhere, essentially. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a piece of wax in the back to protect it from the cover. Make sure you slide it all the way in, or as far in as you can. You can even fold it over if you need to make sure that it's all the way in that crevice. Okay. Okay, that's probably fine. And then you're gonna take the PVA glue. And I'm not gonna have you all do this part, but I do think it's useful for you to see it. I'm gonna do this for you so that everybody, there's gonna be 3 of these little jars floating around. You'll have to share, but that keeps it from having like all of our glue for the semester all drying out at once, right? So this is wheat starch. Again, wheat starch makes things dry much faster, especially if they're relatively organic glues. You can add this to like Elmer's glue to make it dry faster and with a more intense bond if you wanted to. But PVA glue is acid-free. And I'm pretty sure Elmer's glue is not, if I'm remembering right. You can buy some that is, but. So for this amount, I'm only gonna put in this much wheat starch. Maybe a little more. And then I'm gonna stir it in. You don't want to shake the glue because that's just going to introduce a bunch of air into it, and then you're going to have a bunch of air bubbles in your glue as you're working. Okay, I'm going to leave that in there because I can use that glue in a second. And then you're going to take a glue brush. Please remember, do not, right? Use the glue brushes for anything but glue. I'm just gonna pop it in here real quick. And get a little bit of that excess off. I'm gonna lift my book, hold it down as flat as I can, and paint along the edges. This is why you really wanna make sure you have that wax paper in there. Okay, otherwise you're going to end up gluing your niche to the back cover, and I don't think you want to do that. It's perfectly okay if you're a little bit globby with this. I'm a little nervous to go closer to the edge. That's about as far as I'm going to go. Itself down. Sometimes it's a good idea to put an object in there if you've got a page that wants to fight you like I do. We'll see what it does. Oop. And it's going to bow. Like there's no way to prevent it having a little bit of bowing at least. I'm also going to do at least one thing that I do not want you all to do. It's for the sake of the speed of the demo, right? If you wanted to, you could also put a little bit of glue on that top corner or pull a little bit of that excess glue off. We're gonna assume that's enough glue. It should be like visibly glued together, right? I'm missing a little up here. Again, glue in the direction, oh, I didn't say that yet. Glue in the direction of the pages. So don't glue up and down, right? Follow the kind of grain of the paper. And I'm gonna put that right there. And then once you've got a satisfactory amount of glue on there, you're gonna lay another piece of wax paper on top, well into that crease. You'd better behave. Close it, and then you'll put a weight on it and let it dry for about an hour. Okay. So if you were gonna do this and like leave it in that little cabinet, make sure you put a piece of newsprint underneath it, okay? Just so it doesn't glue itself to the shelf. But yeah.
We do that before we start cutting.
Before, yes, yeah.
But after we take out the pages.
After you take out the pages. With the niche, you don't take out any pages, but I would do it after you've taken out these excess pages.
Okay, so
In
figure
the
out
rest
the
of
size
it.
of your niche and then take out the pages and then.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. I'm not going to do that because otherwise we'd just be sitting here looking at each other. So I've just kind of gently pressed down on it. I am gonna close the lead
Glue
starch.
is gonna hold that whole thing together.
Theoretically, sometimes you have to do like 2 or 3 more passes to really glob it on. Especially if you're using like a glossy-ish paper or a slightly less textured paper. Sometimes it doesn't absorb the glue, but it is paper, right? And paper doesn't just absorb topically, it absorbs into itself. It should, anyway. Which again is why gloss paper is not great for this, because a gloss paper is not going to absorb enough to actually hold those quarters together. Yeah.
And then when we're cutting the niche in,
Mm-hmm.
how do you know how far down you're not gonna cut all the way through?
So you'll see.
Well, I mean, I'll know if I cut all the way through.
Exactly, yeah. I might not be understanding your question, Jeff. Could you ask it again?
Okay, so I'm gonna, now I'm gonna get my X-Acto knife out, and I'm gonna start cutting those holes. Okay. Seems to me that you got some issue with how far down you just start cutting, and then at some point you could just wind up going through the whole thing.
You could, yeah. So you want to like have a predetermined depth, basically, and you can always check if you want to be super precise. You can always check with a ruler. I've got glue all over me. But generally speaking, it's kind of intuitive, right? So as you go, you'll kind of cut a little bit. I'm hoping this is dry enough that I can show you instead of just telling you, right? We'll see. So again, the reason we use wax paper is it doesn't glue itself. It's not unusual to get a little bit of that crispiness. I'm just gonna put this right here. We're gonna pretend like it's glued itself down. I haven't given it enough time, but I wanna kind of show you.
We're not worried
The
about the
answer.
fact that it's sort of rippled at the edges.
No, it's gonna do that anytime you add any kind of moisture to it. No, I'm just trying not to cut myself. Have you seen that TikTok of that guy trying to cut a sandwich? Where he keeps going to, oh no. Yeah, sometimes I feel like that. Okay, So I'm gonna keep these pages, like you heard me kind of push them over. I'm really gonna try and keep them separate while I do this. Because I do want this book to work decently for a demo. What I'm gonna do for my niche is just use a simple shape. So I've brought some triangles. We'll do a circle. These are plastic, which makes them good to use when it's slightly damp still, right? They're gonna come up. And I guess we're putting it right here. I don't really feel like fighting with it. And you'll just start cutting. Slowly, calmly. Try not to ruin my triangles, but you know. Also, please, with safety, don't cut towards your hand if you can avoid it. There is no need to cut quickly. We're not in a rodeo. I had a professor who used to say that. Don't do this like you're in a rodeo. This is art. I'm not really sure why he was so obsessed with rodeos, actually. And then you'll start pulling each page up as you go. And then cutting again.
Is there like a certain margin you should keep it from reaching the edge of the niche?
That's a good question. I tend not to want to have it like closer than half an inch, just from my own experience and from what I've seen other people do. If you do, though, you can always approach it with the kind of, how would I describe it? The kind of reinforcement perspective, where if you're like really close to that edge, go into the niche after you're done cutting it and glue that as well. Especially if it's going to be a simple niche, because that'll give it a little bit more strength, right? As people kind of open it and move it around. And then you just do this for a very long time until you get to the depth that you want. So it's a pretty slow process. So I wouldn't really be too worried about running the risk of getting all the way through to the back. I don't think I've ever accidentally done that.
Well, I wanted to ask, is there a reason why you don't want to glue it to the back cover?
There's not.
I mean, if I wanted to just make that one solid thing.
Yeah, so if you wanted to do any kind of modification to the cover, I would do it before you make your niche, if that's the case. So I'm probably going to put fabric on my cover in some places, just to kind of show you how to do it. Let me put that down before I stab myself. And I might put a couple other things, so I might try poking like a hole with an awl through it. We'll see if this cover behaves well enough. But if you're like, I definitely want to glue that to the back, I don't want people to be able to move the niche around, which is not a bad idea, right? Because that gives it a little bit more structural integrity. You can always glue it to that back, but make sure you do all your cover alterations first.
Yeah, I have a reason for wanting to have that back on it.
Yeah.